All right. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our 20th virtual CavanKerry press reading. Yes, this is the 20th virtual reading that we have. Please clap it up. Show some care in the comments, being here for what has been really amazing. We were going to start the virtual readings before the COVID times, and they came just in time, and we continued those, and we've had such a great response from everyone that we had to continue. We had to continue keeping this going. So guaranteed for every reading series, there will be a CavanKerry Press virtual reading, and we'll go from 20. I can't wait till we're at 30, 50, and 100. It's going to be so much fun. And speaking of fun, hope everyone had a wonderful Mother's Day of hanging out with your family or in remembrance of loved ones that are still mothers to us, even afterwards. We have two wonderful, wonderful mother type people, literary people for myself this evening, and Susan Jackson and Joan Cusack Handler. So we're going to be celebrating the launch of Susan Jackson's book, In the River of Songs, yay! As well as celebrating Joan Cusack Handler, the one that pays me and has wonderful, wonderful books, and is the founder of this press, CavanKerry Press. This is how this evening is going to work. We're going to start with our land acknowledgement by Gabriel Cleveland, and afterwards I'll read Joan Cusack Handler's bio. She will read. Afterwards, we will read the bio of Susan Jackson. She will read, and then we'll have a talk back with everyone. So when we have that talk back with everyone, please, in the chats, make sure that you are putting comments and anything that you heard that sounded just beautiful and breathtaking. You can communicate with us through the chat. Okay, so now I am going to turn it over to Gabriel so he could give us our land acknowledgement.
All right. Thank you, Dimitri. As Dimitri said, I'm Gabriel. I'm the managing editor for CavanKerry Press, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to this series, as Dimitri already said, and to celebrate Joan and Susan tonight. Before the reading begins, we want to take the moment to acknowledge the land we occupy in Bergen County, New Jersey, belongs to the Lenni Lenape people. We honor their history, and we cannot function in our work as arts activists, nor offer a safe space for all writers without understanding the struggle for Indigenous rights. Additionally, we join organizations across the country in celebrating Asian American and Pacific Islander Month, and in honoring the vital contributions of AAPI authors to the development of American literature and culture. We encourage each of you to support the publication of AAPI authors across the industry by purchasing their work. Purchase often, not just in May, whenever it's published. Always get that support out there. Now I'm going to pass the baton back to Dimitri to get the show rolling. Thank you.
All right, and thank you so much, Gabe. Yes, please support authors, not just in the month where they're recognized, but every month. So now let's start with the founder, Joan Cusack Handler, who is a poet, memoirist, editor, and psychologist in clinical practice. She has published 3 books, 2 poetry collections, Glorious and The Red Canoe, Love in Its Making, and a memoir, Confessions of Joan Natal. And most recently, Orphans. Recipient of 5 Pushcart nominations and a Sampler Award from the Boston Review, she is the founder and mother of CavanKerry Press. A Bronx native, she currently lives in Brooklyn and also claims Fort Lee as her home, and also East Hampton, New York. Everyone, here is Mama Joan Cusack Handler. Woo. You're muted, Joan.
Thank you. I know, I just noticed it. Thank you all. Thank you, Dimitri and Gabe. And thank you for being, wait a minute. Thank you for being here, all of our friends. I'm going to read some beach poems to you. It's that time of the year, and I'm ready for the water. Another language. The vibrating floor tells me my husband's back. How clearly bodies speak. The back of a head, the list in a walk, the weight of a sandaled foot at the end of a body of impressive size. Face, voice, no longer needed to announce us. That's marriage. The air we breathe. 42 years of it, trusting each body's statement, plea, innuendo. The gazebo, small sanctuary, this morning, all virtue. Could they be guests clustered on that jetty leading to it? Inside the gazebo, sanctified as chuppah, 3 people, the couple, the officiant preparing this chapel for its holiest work, the sacrament, the joining of lives. What could be more sacred than this small cathedral in the form of a cross? The long spine of redwood she'll walk, the broad limbs embracing the couple. At the head, the chapel itself, Christ, the initiator. No nails here, no thorns, just the master himself, as in Canaan, blessing the wine, feeding the flock. Behind him, whitecaps rushing to witness. Worship. Gull convention on the right arm of the jetty. Hundreds all facing east, like congregants in church, more likely nuns. The predictable habits, black and white, some gray, some standing, others nestled on their bellies. What prayer halts their flight, calls them to this community? Rest, quiet, or some deeper order known only to the flock? Meditation, sacred ritual? Perhaps they're gods solving a problem, or family blessing a wedding. It's Sunday morning, I assume, in their Gull universe too. So perhaps like us, they just need a day off, and the few hours thinking or napping we all count on Sunday for. Sunday, 11 a.m. Low tide. Men in green, pitchfork, seaweed. Berms to protect the beach. Not the green I remember, more brown, measure of the harsher sun. Today I resent nothing. Even people don't bother me. I welcome the gazebo, the head of Christ, the jetty, the perennial cross leading to it. 6 people walk in formation as if in grief. Where better to face a loss? Wombs. My hands reach for my husband. His hand, hip, thigh. Sometimes they stroke his chest, though lately not enough. The aging is hard. forget to kiss, nestle, squander our bodies, join forces in the kitchen, fingers diving into the red meat. I've taken to grading us again. Nothing intellectual, even practical. Touch, mostly. That act of hands, legs, whole body seeking love is received. Rituals. Morning begins with him grabbing his bag and reminding me to take my meds, ship ID, and license. Leisurely breakfast, cab to tour bus. Several stops later, he's frantic. My bag, did I have it? How could I be so stupid? His long frozen mother rising again. So sad, those voices erupt, and we're children hating ourselves. It's human, happens to everyone. I'm yelling, pleading, anything to mute that viper. A brain flash, the cab sign said flywheel. I shout to the clouds and the crowd surrounding us as the cabbie pulls up, flashing the bag. Above the beach. Fastidious as I am with what I consider mine, I redesign everything. On Noyak's back road, while Alan drives, I trim tendrils and vines my father worried would choke the trees. Move that pole to the other side and marvel at the golf course, halved by the road. No changes needed here. Never touch the sea, seldom the beach. Until this morning. First to go is this charming gazebo and redwood walk, forming the ever-present, everlasting cross. Wherever I go, I find God. Next, the ever-mounting berm that keeps this jaunty sea from having its way. Wave chasing wave and full of itself, ready for its day on the beach. This sea is mine. But today I'm Christ clearing the temple. I'll be generous. All worshipers welcome, provided they make no attempt to impose constructions that block my sea. But for now, it's just me, Alan prowling the beach, someday our son and his daughters romping at the edge. Waters. What separates this gulf from the oceans I venerate? They're all majesty, aloof, more God than man. This one's beach. Laugh out loud, hanging out, all of us under our umbrellas, like the Long Island Sound I grew up on. My spot at the edge of the bulkhead, cracked cement and towel, my lounge. Scores of us, head to head, sunning, baking, radios blasting, Chuck Berry or the Platters, and I just another kid, finally fitting in, grateful for these last few minutes before getting myself ready for the squashed corners of 68B. 5 tiny rooms, 6 huge people. And I'll end with this. Life's full of promises of sun, chance of rain. My relationship with my husband. The ease of 42 years, sunny mostly. We've reached that age where fighting's rare. Side by side, speaking love in all its gestures. Him searching out my perfect spot, where it's only me, a few gulls, and the sea. Such gentle language. And tomorrow there'll be another perfect spot and another the day after. Then me sauteing onions to top his steak or salmon, freezing buckets of wild rice and pesto so we never run out. But we did. These last weeks, when poems were the only love I had time for. But I'm back, and so is he. I think I'll close this notebook for a while. I'm honored to be reading with you, Susan. Congratulations on your amazing book.
Joan, thank you so much for that. There's so much to say when I get to hear your words. I really loved that Gabriel and we quoted at the same time, 5 tiny rooms, 6 huge people. The way you read is immaculate, and I can't wait to hear Susan, and I can't wait to get to the Q&A because I know it's going to be such a lush conversation. Thank you, Joan.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to transition over to Susan Jackson's bio. Susan Jackson is the author of Through a Gate of Trees, CavanKerry Press, 2007, and the chapbook All the Light in Between, Finishing Line Press, 2013, and now 2022's In the River of Songs, also by us. Her writing has been published recently in Tiferet Journal, Lips, Patterson Literary Review, and Nimrod International Journal. She was awarded a fellowship from the New Jersey State Council on the Arts, the Geraldine R. Dodge Foundation residency grants to the Vermont Studio Center and Virginia Center for the Creative Arts, a pushcart nomination, and recognition from the Allen Ginsberg Poetry Awards. During the summer, Jackson co-leads a group in Poetry as Spiritual Practice. With 4 grown children and 2 granddaughters, she and her husband live in Teton County, Wyoming. Everyone, please join me in welcoming Susan Jackson.
I unmuted. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Dimitri, for that introduction. And Joan, it's just such an honor. What a brilliant reading. And I want to thank everyone at CavanKerry. And thank you all for being here to join us in the launch of this beautiful book, In the River of Songs. It's just wonderful. Joan, when I think of all that you've accomplished since the founding of CavanKerry, the community of writers that you've fostered, and the amazing outreach that you do through the Laurel Books and the Waiting Room Reader, and just to mention a few, it's really quite amazing and a real gift to many, many people. I'd like to dedicate my reading tonight to another CavanKerry author, Sandra Gash, who was a dear friend and died last summer. Many of you here may remember her book, Silk Elegy, but this one's for you, Sandra. And let's see, let's read some poems. I'm going to start with Pausing Below Inspiration Point, Jenny Lake. Honestly, I'm scared to death on this narrow ledge when I see how far down the lake is. None of the other hikers seem aware of the drop. Not the woman in flip-flops, not the man with a toddler on his shoulders, even when his foot slips and sends a stone hurling through space. That sound alone makes me huddle closer to the rock wall. All my friends have gone on up, also oblivious. A voice in my head claiming to be the mountain says, "Don't look down, look out at the beauty. You will not fall." And this is just too weird, my other self thinks. But I remember what Basho said when he crossed the Great Divide. To tell the truth is a miracle, which is when I unfreeze enough to stand up, rise like Jacob from his pillow. This is holy ground. And maybe that's all I need to know to follow these steep paths along Earth's ancient body. I find that many of my poems are a kind of dance between the qualities of absence and presence, or light and shadow. And this next poem is one of those. It's the first one in the collection. The Woman Who Loved Trees. The woman who loved trees couldn't bear to see the cottonwoods taken down, though their roots had gone wild, pushing stones onto the terrace, strangling underground wires. She walked the garden, talking to the trees, waited to think of losing the patterns of light along the pathway. But the body needs to bend, to yield, liquefy as light liquefies hills. And here's the mystery. She was a woman who loved trees, but the next day the cottonwoods were gone, the yard empty. This emptiness flowed over the walkway to fill the space, became a singing bowl. Maybe the ground already felt the coming of something new. Maybe solitude became her companion in her changed landscape. For the woman who loved trees also loved rosemary and cosmos, wild lupin, and the quaking aspen turning golden in the distance. I find that a lot of my poems center around various types of art. And this next one is about the painter Pierre Bonnard, who was a post-impressionist and did a lot of his, spent a lot of his career painting in the south of France, near Le Cannet and Nice. And he was drawn there by the quality of light and color in the area. Let it be felt the painter was there for Pierre Bonnard. Let it be felt the painter was there, wrote Bonnard, artist of the floating world he captured on canvas in a gospel of shapes. Whether studying the cadence of space through the French window or in the terrace at Vernon, he made an altarpiece of the sudden moment of seeing, and still he wanted us to see the unseen hand, the man himself in search of the pure thing. As colors pitched and winked, he found rapport between the green and blue, the peach and cornhusk yellow, brushstrokes creating the new language for what he saw and felt in the mystery of light and shadow. His wife Marta with a bowl of milk, Marta at the table, or legs spread on the unmade bed, Marta in the water of so many tubs, cradled. He didn't search out beauty. The how and why of beauty was what he saw and what he loved, the seduction of his art. Since we've celebrated Mother's Day this past weekend, I've been thinking a lot about my mother, and I'm going to read two poems now that I wrote for her. This one is Mother in the Alzheimer's Wing. Already it's like sitting with her ghost, this woman who spends her days in the mists of other worlds, not even knowing where she lives. Her eyes the color of cattails, reflective like still water. But she looks beyond me, toward that other far side of the air, brushes back wisps of silver hair and sighs. But when I sing my favorite childhood songs, she chimes in softly. She doesn't look surprised to know the words. Once she bustled in hospital nurseries tending to newborns. I wish she remembered those days. I want her to tell me her stories again so I don't forget. So I keep you with me, Mother. But now her eyes close, she coughs, Like the 7 black crows on the grass outside, caw, caw. She flies out of sight where I can't reach her. Sometimes I feel her in me as I bend over the kitchen counter to read, crossing my ankles and leaning on my elbows the way she always did, as if my body knows what connects us. Just now she opens her eyes and says clearly, "You're my daughter, right?" And when I say yes, she answers, "Good." And here I thought this poem was about what's lost, but instead turns out to be for every unexpected gift we're given. Let's see. And this one also for my mother. Anything with wings. Anything with wings reminded me of her after she died. Even a honeybee at the window hovering and buzzing, or the hummingbird dipping to the deep blooms on the terrace. Butterflies, bluebirds all indigo iridescence, and the call of the cardinal, bell-like over the world. How she loved their sudden winter red on snow. Some say a person passing away is like the wing of a library burning down. All those stories, the history, so many pages perished. But after the burning, this afternoon on our walk, a wind comes up. Trees take wing, their leaves flicker in sunlight, winking in this wind. Dogwood petals fly like wings beating air. These threads of light, all the white wings, like you, everywhere. All the white wings, like you, everywhere. Let's see. This next one is about a brief moment in time, and maybe you've experienced that same kind of a flash of things happening that you wish you could capture and keep forever. A poem is the sky. First light behind bare tree branches, and the way invisible writing appears on paper, I see the tracks left by the red fox in the frost on the grass. A jay flies from the blue spruce toward the curve of white moon, and the sky is a poem. Oh gosh, it seems amazing to me now that not so long ago, dentists actually used mercury for fillings. And this is about my experience. Quicksilver. Mother dropped us off so she could run errands. In the dentist's office of my childhood, the dentist himself was called Dr. Payne. Even a 9-year-old knew he should change his name. He told bad jokes as he prodded and probed with the gleaming machinery. But if I'd been a good girl, and I always was, he bestowed another gift, a pea-sized mercurial ball called Quicksilver, which roamed the palm of my hand like a piece of gunshot. I watched it divide into tiny bits when provoked with my fingernail, then reassemble as one quivering silver orb when I rotated my hand back and forth. All through my sister's turn in the grim chair with the screaming drill, I waited in the waiting room where I could hear a sound deep in her throat, not a moan really, more like gagging. Again and again, my index finger jabbed the little ball of quicksilver to break it apart, and I watched it whiz back together as if drawn by some invisible magnetic shining inside itself. If meaning had a rhythm or a tune it could sing, what would it be? I hummed to the shimmering quicksilver. Tell me your secret, I marveled, oblivious to its dangerous nature, capable of poisoning anyone who touched it. Let's see. So the next poem was inspired by watching our granddaughters blowing bubbles in the backyard, and I'm sure a lot of you know that joy of how much fun they have. Souffle. In the yard on a summer day, a child dips the wand into the cup, raises it to the sky, and gently blows. Too hard, the liquid disperses. Too soft, it dribbles to the ground. Souffle, the French would say, for the tender motion of wind. And the child knows how it feels like whistling, watches the bubble expand, then float off. A perfect iridescence, rising, soaring, shimmering, then pop, gone. The child does it again and again, dipping the wand, creating those fragile spheres, every time full of surprise when one bursts, here and gone, disappearing, just like that, just like us. Rise, shimmer, gone. Rise, shimmer, gone. Oh, I think I'll let the next one just speak for itself. Song 2, Punta del Burro. I'll never climb the stairs again without seeing the snake on the landing. Ribbon thin, color of a reed. It lay there, head raised like a cobra. The position ancient Egyptians called divine, but when you meet a snake in your house, it doesn't feel divine. You scream for help. You don't take your eyes off the creature, lest it dart out of sight under furniture or in a closet. And you have to go to sleep at night knowing somewhere there's a snake. The man came running, brought a rake and a bag. Then the snake tried to escape behind the big planter. It got caught. But when afternoon sunlight casts shadows over the stone floor, or wind disturbs the palm fronds, I shiver. I find, I'd love to talk with Joan about this. I find writing poems is about discovery. Sometimes I start with an image or a thought, and I really have no idea where the poem is going, but the poem knows. And in this next one, we were watching baby birds leave the nest, and I was stunned at how protective the parent birds were. And the word valiant came to my mind. And that word became a kind of hinge, or actually more like a mine shaft that I fell through. So I was dropping down through unexpected images and unexpected places. And it turned out the poem was about my father. So this is from Under the Eaves. We watched the fledgling wrens leave the nest, each waiting on the stone wall beside the house before flying off. Then a weasel appears from a crevice in the rocks. The mother wren dive bombs his head. He hides for a minute, then pops out closer, while parent birds peck him back. It's the 50th anniversary of the moon landing, and someone sent me the words the president would have read if the men were not able to return to Earth. The piece praised the astronauts' valor, told how they went in peace, laying down their lives in search of truth and understanding. And I think about the day the Challenger blew up in '86, how we watched it live on TV at Sloan Kettering in the time of your brain tumor. As they wheeled you into the elevator for surgery, you raised your hand to wave, and then the door closed. So a couple more poems. Let's see. Another of my favorite artists is Ellen Atsui, who takes ordinary things and creates monumental creations. And I was dazzled when I saw his solo show at the Brooklyn Museum, probably about 10 years ago now. But he takes bottle caps and stitches them in a way that you have this sort of opposing forces between metal and textiles. So this is called El Anatsui. As I open the wine tonight and tear away the bottle's metal collar. I think of Anatsui collecting all the caps and tabs, pieces of old soda cans from African ground, and making art. Those long curtains of metal stitched together, gleaming with gravity and grace. Today I cut the last 3 peonies before the rain came, and by evening they've drooped, petals dropping onto the kitchen counter one by one. So what lasts? All the people of my family are gone and mourned, and I am alone save for you. But there's a place that Anatsui knew, that empty space, like the invisible hub at the center of an ever-turning wheel, where out of nothing, creation flows, birthing art into our world. And I'm going to close with a poem from Through a Gate of Trees. It's called Gratitude, because I'm so grateful that we could be here together tonight. Gratitude. The plane glides across the sky, trailing puffs of a white message. Silver shines and glints on blue. And what if a person could do what planes do? Move above clouds, carry their weight with grace, fly low over water, and land without wobbling in a new place. What if we could also shed all that holds us down, rise and descend with ease? What if we could sail or simply walk on water? Thank you.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much, Susan. Oh, your poems are so beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm gonna bring Joan back also for our Q&A. We've reached that time, and Susan, you'll see everyone's going to start saying how wonderful your work was. Joan and Susan, actually, if you look at the chat, you would have seen since the beginning of the reading all the great lines and great words that we're speaking to people. And it's so important that we write these words and then we put these words out into the world and they're speaking to people. So I think that might be a great place to start. We're poets here. We're in the business of words and writing. When did each of you first come into contact with poetry and told yourselves, this is something that I want to do? I want to write my first book.
Joan.
I actually don't recall even reading a poem until college. And unfortunately, it was T.S. Eliot's Wasteland. And as far as I was concerned, it was a wasteland. It was a terrible introduction to poetry, especially because the way that the professor taught it was that he pulled apart every word, every phrase. It was endless. And it was 30 years later that I fell in love with poetry and
Wow.
still want to write poems.
Wow.
That's excellent. That's excellent. I'm going to have a follow-up for that, Joan, because that's such a great story. Susan, what about you? When did you first realize, when was your first brush up against poetry and saying, this is something that I would like to do?
Okay, so my really first brush up with poetry was before I was born, because my father wrote a poem to tell the family that they were expecting their first baby. And I have that. So I was called Wilby because, anyway. So that probably when I was very little, I loved Child's Garden of Verses I loved the rhythm, but it probably wasn't until college that I started writing more seriously. And probably a lot later in life when I thought I would love to put all these little scraps that I've been working on together to a book.
Excellent, excellent. So a follow-up question for the two of you. You are speaking with someone that has never read a poem before, and you want them to feel those similar feelings you had that inspired you to want to continue writing or to explore poetry. Who would you suggest that this person read, this person that never read poetry before? Who are some of your favorites that you feel like they would be like, oh, yeah, I could see what you see in this?
Whitman.
Okay.
Gerald Stern. Emily Dickinson. Molly Peacock. Donald Hall. Lucille Clifton.
We're creating the syllabus as we speak, so everyone take notes.
I'm having a senior moment. Is it Gwendolyn? Is her first
Yes.
name Gwendolyn?
Yes, Gwendolyn.
Yes.
A splendid poet. Those would be the ones that I would gift to a person who had not read poetry before.
And it would be a gift. Thank you, Joan. Susan, anyone else to add?
I would love to bring someone to a festival like the Dodge Poetry Festival or the Massachusetts and let them hear all different voices and different styles, and like going into a museum where you walk in front of different types of art, let them be drawn to what, because I think of poetry as something that works on you physically, you know, so you hear words that really can ignite curiosity and wonder, and can let people know that they're not alone, that poetry doesn't solve issues, but it sort of says, I'm having the human experience that you're having. And yeah, so I would say, oh, Lawrence Ferlinghetti, didn't he write, was it Coney Island of the Mind? And right, I love Victoria Chang's new books, Obit and Dear Memory. And I love Lucille Clifton, Mark Doty, Young Lee, lot, you know, just the world is full of richness. We just
so much. Yeah, so much richness. This is great. So now the CavanKerry challenge is the two-part challenge. One, you have to read, but also you have to listen and you have to experience, right? I love these readings because it takes these books that we help create and foster into new heights, into new levels. And these conversations are so important. So thank you both for that. This question is for both Joan and Susan. So many of the poems you read tonight are beautiful descriptions of communion with the moment amidst the chaotic hustle and bustles of life. These flow so naturally, yet must require a great deal of focus and attention. How do you tune out the background noise to capture these experiences in your poetry so clearly? So within the hustle and bustle, there's that beauty. How do you get that laser focus to capture that glint of beauty amongst all of this hustle and bustle and chaos?
I would say for me, it's about not separating anything out, because you never know when that glint of beauty is going to approach you or present itself to be dazzled. So I think just being as present as, for me, being as present as I can be every moment of every day, and being open to what is going to come my way.
Great, thank you.
And when a poem arrests me and owns me, it doesn't matter what's happening outside or beyond the poem itself and me. It's a very, very private, personal experience. And everything else is just fine. It doesn't get in the way. It proceeds the way it's supposed to. The fact is that the poem was given to me in that setting. And there's a reason for that. I don't know it, but
Right.
It came to me in a busy, populated setting. And it provides a private little space for me and it for a while.
Right. There's this interesting dichotomy between chasing a poem and letting it find you, right? And I think oftentimes we get stuck in moments where we're supposed to let that poem wash over us, that we're trying to chase it down. And sometimes that could work. You know, I would assume if you're going towards a collection or you want to write on a certain subject. But I think that a lot of what we do with poeting, a lot of it just finds us in really weird ways, right? And sometimes we have no idea where that comes from. So Susan, you wanted to talk about the idea of discovery and talking about poems that kind of come out of nowhere. You mentioned that you were looking at a baby bird being assisted by the bird parents, and they were overprotective. And you had this one word, valiant, and you followed that thought. And it painted this portrait, and it became a poem about your father. So let's try to talk shop for a second. And can you walk us through that process of both of you having an idea for a poem, and how does that idea manifest itself sometimes into a place you never even thought it was going to go? And maybe Susan, we could start, you could walk us through that poem.
Okay, well,
that you prefaced with us.
Sure. Often for me, the first signal that a poem is sort of in the offing is I get a prickling on the back of my neck. There's a physicality to it. It's very funny. And I'll often write on whatever little scrap of paper I have. Like I have all these grocery lists that have lines for poems on the side because it was the only paper I had with me. But I think you have to, or for me, I need to be centered and listen and let things come to the surface, and perhaps trust that the poem knows something that I may not know. So be willing to try to go down a path. I think it was the Spanish poet Antonio Machado who said, travelers, there is no path, we make the path by walking. So kind of have to, there's a simultaneous quality to going out and writing the next line, but having no idea where that's really going to take you. So for me, I would have never said that watching baby birds leave a nest was going to take me to the period of time right before my father died.
Mm,
How did I
thank
get
you.
there? How did I get there? That, I think, is for me somewhat of a mystery. And you have to sort of give yourself in to the mystery of how it works.
Yeah, yeah. Joan, do you have anything to add to that? Getting into the mystery
I
of that
think
discovery.
that the most important thing that I try to do is just record what comes
Mhm.
to me. No edits, no circling around and suggesting that whatever it is that I'm thinking or just wrote makes no sense, or it's obscene, or it's anything else that it's not supposed to be. It's supposed to be. And so I just let it take me as far as it will take me. And that's when I discover what the poem's about. I mean, the discovery that Susan's talking about is just, it's just heaven. When there you open the box and there it is. And oh my goodness, I didn't know I was writing about my father. I didn't know that I was celebrating this or mourning that. Those are the richest experiences of all. And we have to be quiet and let our muse or unconscious, whatever we want to call it, speak. That's the voice. And that's the thing that we can't make art without, and that no one else can replicate. It's the one thing I believe that is truly unique about each one of us. No one else could write the poem, any of the poems that you just read, Susan. Any good poem. It's so it has to do with releasing every restriction. When the process begins, just settle in and record.
Fasten your seatbelt.
That's right. That's right.
Right. And the settling it in and the quietude of that process and just letting it happen, right? I think the hardest thing for a lot of young writers is just to trust themselves in letting things happen and letting things flow. And I think that's something that we could all kind of think about when we first started writing, that could be a little rough. And I know Dana's on this call, Marianne Miller, hi, is on this call. And I know they also work with students, and going through the process of early writers and dealing with that self-saboteur and not thinking that they're good enough to continue writing, or that their words or what they're saying doesn't matter. It's been said before, right? And Joan, it was captivating during one of your poems when you had this line that says, "to mute a viper." And that was in reference to a childhood value of feeling unvalued, of having that sense of failure. And thinking about that self-saboteur, or that other person that tells you that you're not really good enough to write, or that this story shouldn't really matter. Early on, how did both of you mute that voice that told you you weren't good enough, or that you wouldn't complete that collection? And, you know, there might not be a right answer. I know there's a possibility that we still might be talking to that person all the time.
I think that those doubts are, or that voice is there. And if you, for myself, if I can befriend it and say, oh, that's you again. Okay, I'm not going to listen. And to believe exactly what we tell young people, that you have to believe in yourself, and you have to believe in what the poem knows, and keep learning, keep trying. And I think something Joan said earlier really stuck with me about you started off with the wasteland, and how it sounds like almost harmful to your aesthetic appreciation of poetry. And I think one of the opportunities and responsibilities for people today is to help people know that poetry is for everyone, not for some, it's not enigmatic, difficult language that you have to struggle to understand, but it's for everyone, like water and air are for everyone. And that it's really important to have people be able to enjoy poetry and not feel that they're shut out.
Brilliant. Thank you so much.
I think that I'm wondering if I'm still fighting that battle. I think I probably am in some cases. It took me a very long time before I could accept what was given to me. And I think a lot of that had to do with my Catholic upbringing and the emphasis on sin and having feelings that are totally unseemly, and feeling bad, feeling that there's a part of myself that's it's bad. And so, I mean, I remember having some great sessions with Molly Peacock, whom I worked with. I know Susan did too. And we would be going through a poem and she would say, I'm not clear what you're doing here. And I'd say, well, what I wrote was this, but it didn't make any sense. So I got rid of it and I wrote what's in the poem now. And she said, put it back in. She said, you're always trying to cover your bra straps. Your bra straps show. Let them be. So,
love that.
I mean, I really needed that level of confidence. And so I worked a long time to be able to say what I have to say. I wanted to write small, little, smart poems. And I wanted to be smart. And I didn't want to be messy and profane. I wanted to be neat and small, and that goes to my body. So it's a fascinating discovery, and it basically has to do with just the distance we travel to accept ourselves.
Absolutely.
You know, all the quirks and beauties.
Mm.
So, yeah, and you know, I mean, basically, I'd say to somebody, write your heart out. Just put it on paper. You don't have to do anything with it. Don't be afraid of it.
Right.
He has
Right.
to see it. You can just hide it, get rid of it after but you need to write it.
Absolutely.
Right. It's important to go through that experience, right?
Yes.
Because if we sidestep ourselves, we're never addressing, as Susan said, right? Acknowledging that that's there and
Mhm.
then moving from it,
Right,
right? You got to show the bra straps.
absolutely.
Just show them.
Mhm.
Oh, man.
Life is messy. Life is definitely messy.
It is.
And if you shy away from that, you know, plant a garden, you've got to get your hands muddy.
Mhm. Mm,
Oh, yeah.
right.
Definitely. Definitely. Speaking of gardens and speaking of lush poems, I'm really in the mood for an encore poem from each of you. And Susan, I got a direct message from Gabriel, and he said, please ask Susan to read Honey. Tell her to read Honey. So let's get some encore poems.
I have to look. I don't know the page by heart, but I will look for Honey. Okay, here we go. Honey. As soon as we spread honey on our toast, 2 bees buzz the table and won't leave for anything. They Zoom. Of course, they Zoom. This was before Zoom. Yeah. They Zoom. They perch on plates. The man says he's allergic and wants to wave them away, but the woman says that only aggravates them, and the children start to scream for fear of being stung. It's a madhouse. All the delight of our family breakfast on a terrace overlooking the Bay of Banderas with hummingbirds delving into the red hibiscus and the sound of the sea is gone because of honey. Then the woman spoons a dollop on a saucer at the far end of the table, and we let the creatures join us. For the rest of breakfast, the bees feast like beings returned to their own creation. The honey is golden. We watch it glisten in the sun while bee legs jig with delight, and they feed as if that's all there is.
Thank you so much. I have to mute myself when both of you are reading because there's so many beautiful lines just saying the whole time. Like I'm having that honey on that toast.
I love
Thank you so much. Yeah. Joan, do you have a last poem to share?
I do. I'm looking for it.
And while you're looking for it, Joan, thank you so much, everyone who stayed so far. We'll read Joan's last poem to take us out. We'll have one final question, and then we'll send everyone home for the evening. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. Go ahead, Joan.
This was definitely me being outrageous. And flat back. It's an orthopedic term, which basically means that the spine is not only curved, but it's twisted. And if that twist is not attended to in surgery, then the person develops flat back, which basically means that there is a loss of the curve, the dip in the back. So I indulge myself in this. I miss balance, sure footing, the clipped remark of my boots against the pavement, the straight silhouette in storefront windows. I've lost 3 inches between my fused spine and stooping. the years plowing me under. Unseemly, yes, but it feels like that sometimes. I want to hike myself up on the side of the pool, not shy away from my neighbor's pickup. I miss my round tush in my Ralph Lauren dress. No way. Your butt's never been globe-like. Runs in the family. Shovel butt, they say. And I miss pretty shoes. Black patent pumps, red sandals. They're finally making style in my size. But I turned around and my ankle had to be fused. Arthritis after a break. Not that I don't love my sneakers. Yellow and red, banded with silver. My uniform these days. Sensible, but routine, like marriage sometimes. I want an affair. Seductive, dazzling stilettos. Forget it. It'd take another surgery to straighten those toes in full view of in sandals. But black patent pumps, the strength to walk in them, the assured pitch of my back, gliding in perfect balance, the long stretch of me strutting that bulkhead, feet slapping the stone.
Wow, wow. You had so many of us in stitches, Joan. Literally and figuratively.
Thank you, thank you. It was a wonderful evening. Thank you both so much.
Yeah, thank you very much. I got one last question to take us out. Both of these poems were so precious and so different. And we went many places this evening. So I have this one question still hanging in my head. Susan, you had your first book with us, then you had another book in between, and now your third. Joan, you've had 4 books with CavanKerry Press. What were some things you learned from book to book throughout your careers? What have you learned about yourself? What's maybe something you've learned about your writing?
Well, I tried to do something different in each book. So Confessions of Joan the Tall was in the voice of an 11 or 12-year-old girl. When I wrote Orphans, I tried to, I wrote it in the voice, in 3 voices, and each voice having its own form in the book. So, and I tried, actually, it's so interesting when the poem decides where it's going, it's going. I tried to make them all, shape them all the same. No way. They would not, my mother's voice would not lend itself to the line that my father's did, or either of them mine. So because most of my work is autobiographical, and there's a reason for that. I don't want anybody that I've ever seen in my office or anyone who's ever confided in me to find themselves in a poem of mine, and they won't. But in any case, so I do try to be creative.
Excellent, excellent. Continuing with the creativity and the experimentation, right? Like you're all writing towards the same poem, but it's all speaking in a different voice.
Mm-hmm.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Thank you, Joan. Susan?
Well, an artist that I admire said that as he got older, his brushstrokes got looser. And I think that might apply. Also, my interest in form, like, when you have a poem, I think it's something about on the road toward Montauk. Is that?
Yes.
Okay. So in that poem, the way you've used form to offer the reader the opportunity to feel the force of the wind and the edge of land and sea. I thought that was brilliant. And I think that probably my awareness of form is more acute now. And I must say that my admiration for what it takes to put a book together is greatly enhanced, I would say, now with this book versus when I put the book into 3 sections, each section is the title also of a painting, and I tried to get a sense of duality. So the first section is Echo of the Former World. So I thought reverberations of what we've known before, the echo of my ancestors coming through me. And the second section is the title of the cover, which is Early on the River. So it could be early in the morning or early in the evening. And the third one is Paying Time, which has the dual sense of both harvest and laying in provisions for the coming winter. So I think that when I've seen how you all develop the manuscript to book is just fascinating, and I'm like in full of admiration for that. And so I would say, some differences in form and substance and my interaction with the poems, but in terms of where I am and how I look at the world, I would say I'm just more conscious now than I was in the first book.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's what ends up happening, right? As we continue and just evolve, our vision perhaps always stays the same, and our love for it always stays the same, but we just start loving it in different ways, which is beautiful. And also shout outs to folks like Baron Wurmser, who does such a good job on a lot of our editing for our books and bringing these manuscripts to life. Thank you so much, everyone that has stayed around. Thank you so much, Susan, and thank you so much, Joan, for a lovely evening. This was an amazing 20th, I guess, like celebratory reading, and I can't wait for 30. At this point in time, Gabriel and Tamara, if you want to take everyone else off mute, I'm going to remove our spotlight so everyone could say good night and send their blessings, and I will make sure that I also stop the recording.
Thank you so much,
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. That was wonderful.
Bye, Susan.
Wonderful job. Bye.
Yeah.
It was wonderful that you all could be here.
Oh my God.
Family. Great.
The whole family, that's amazing.
Beautiful readings, Joan.
Thank you. And you too, Susan. Very beautiful.